into the US dollar bill.
You ready?
Oh God, no. Hey, you're recording here.
Alright, we ready? How a bill becomes a law. The House. By me.
In the House of Representatives, right?
Yeah. By me, Matthew, and Sarah. The first steps, a bill. A proposed law is presented to the House or Senate. It is the first step for a new law to be born. Most originate from the executive branch, with special interest groups and standing committees contributing as well. And they are put in a hopper, and a hopper is a box hanging at the edge of a clerk's desk where members of the House can introduce bills by dropping into it.
They're the only ones who can do that?
Yeah.
I believe so.
No think he's gonna talk. Never.
I'm sorry, your answer?
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's a picture of the hopper. And
Go.
Way too
it's pretty classy.
Pretty classy. Pretty classy.
Types of bills. Bills are separated into two types of bills, public and private. Public bills, they apply to the nation as a whole, and private bills apply to certain persons or places, and they're a little more specific. So like an example of a private bill would be like the immigration law, because it only applies to those immigrants or aliens. And a public bill is like something like tax measures that applies to everyone within the nation.
Types of resolutions. Joint resolutions are similar to bills in that, when passed, has the force of law, but they usually deal with unusual or temporary matters. Concurrent resolutions do not require the President's signature and deal with matters in which the House and Senate must act together. Resolutions are only taken up by which House they concern, also does not need President's signature or force law. Riders deal with unrelated matters and ride on bills or resolutions that are certain to pass.
So where might we see riders trying to be utilized? Can you give an example where that scenario might come up?
right. What is that?
Well, because what writers do is there's matters, and usually there's bills that are for sure to pass, so they just like piggyback onto the bill so that way they could be kind of introduced to. And usually from there the book says that they usually get like more attention once they're like.
So give me an example of where, I don't know, let's say Sergio was serving in the House of Representatives, and he'd been trying time and time again to get a statue built in Granada. He wanted a statue of some person, some historical figure, and he kept trying to get a bill just for that, and people are like, forget about it.
Mm-hmm. So he would probably he would ride on, say, your bill, which is for like more funds or something for Granada.
Or like if they were to introduce like a new park or something that benefited the community as a whole, and then that would ride on as part with it.
Okay. Or it might have absolutely nothing to do with that. It might be like a defense bill, like to help for funding to hit ISIS and to stop their growth in the Middle East. And you know, that's Serge says, I know people are interested in stopping terrorists where they are, and so he's like, maybe I can sneak this little rider.
Yeah, since it's unrelated, just throw it in there too.
Yeah.
A lot of them are unrelated.
Wait, what? So like you could say, oh, I want this statue to be built, and then put it onto the one about terrorism?
Just tack it on there.
Since
Because
it's
it's
something
gonna
so
pass.
unrelated and minor, in correlation to like the bigger bill that wants to pass, so it's just like, okay, whatever. We'll just pass it on with it if they want the majority of the bill, like the main important part, to pass.
Now, the Rules Committee could put the kibosh on that and say, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's very common for writers to try and be attached to popular folks, or popular bills.
Both.
And then there's the first reading. Bills are numbered and labeled by the clerk of the House, and depending on the number and whether it's supposed to be involves the House or Senate. Like an example would be for the House of Representatives, it'd be HR, and then the number would be 3,410. And then for the Senate, it'd be S, say like 210. And then after the clerk addresses each bill and gives a brief summary of its contents, it is entered in either the journal or the congressional record. And in the journal, it just contains the daily proceedings in the House or Senate, and the congressional record consists of like speeches, debates, comments, votes, motions, etc. But the members they have like 5 days to change anything. They could add speeches that were never said. They could revise remarks that they deem like irrelevant, or even like reconstruct debates. So it's kind of not very like reliable.
Reliable in what sense? I mean, it's not like someone in a court hearing that just records what is there. This is someone who's building a case for the bill, right?
Yeah.
These actions mark the bill's first of 3 readings that they go through. After the first reading, the bill is directed to a committee in which it has jurisdiction over. The second occurs during floor consideration. If the bill is important, it will be read line by line, section by section, and the third is just before the final vote.
The bill in committee. Sometimes referred to as little legislatures, committees play vital roles in lawmaking. They sort through the bills, refer to them, and discard those they deem unworthy, or consider and report those they deem worthy. When a bill is pigeonholed, it tends to die with the committee, but can be reconsidered with a discharge petition. Discharge petition can be filed by any member and must be signed by the majority of the House. It allows that any bill that has been in the committee's possession for 30 days to be brought onto the floor for consideration. If the committee report the bill, it is then sent to the floor to be considered.
So let's say Serge is still, let's say he's able to get his bill out of the Rules Committee and it's assigned to, I don't know, where would the statute go? What committees would the statute bill go to? I don't know, maybe
Budget.
Okay, budget goes to appropriations, goes to maybe environmental, because it could, you know, I don't know, environmental, anyway. So, and then of course Joey being the committee chair of the budget committee, he really doesn't like Serge that much, or he doesn't like the idea of, you know, using federal funds to go build some statue in some park in a town he doesn't really even care about. So in his mind, he's all, man, this isn't going anywhere. I'm going to sit on this bill. We're not going to do squat diddly with it. And Serge is meanwhile watching the other committees this bill's gone through, and they're having hearings, they're having discussions, and some are saying, we're giving it back without any recommendation. Others are saying this is great. Others are saying we don't like it, but we're sending it out. So he's got all the committees doing what needed to be done except for whose? Joey's. And now it's been over 30 days, and Serge is all, man, we got to move on this. And he goes up to Joey and he says, Joey, how are things going in the budget committee with my bill? And Joey, you know, being the consummate politician that he is, you know, he smiles and pats him on the back, says life is good, we're working on it, you know, these things take time, you know. So now, 30 days later, Serge is like, what the heck? And he checks the calendar of the committee, there's no record or mention of his bill. So he goes back to Joey and he says, Joey, what's going on? And Joey's all, I feel your pain, Serge. You know, we've got so much stuff going on, and you know, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. And Serge is all, okay. So now we're 30 days later, and has anything happened?
No.
So Serge is smart enough to know that he's barking up the wrong tree. So what does Serge do?
Discharge.
He says there's only one way I'm getting that thing out of there, and I know it's hard. It rarely happens, but he starts using his great personal skills, his glad handing, his personal context, and he goes to Jesus, he goes to Bianca, he goes to Ramon. He gets enough people in the house to help sign a discharge petition. He gets enough votes. The sergeant at arms goes to Joey's budget committee, and he politely requests from Joey the bill and takes it, and now it can continue to move on the process. So Joey tried to pigeonhole it, but because Serge lobbied for a discharge petition and won, the bill's back on wheels, right?
Yeah. Well, gathering information. Committees do most of their work through subcommittees, committees formed to address specific issues. Public hearings are held when there is an important bill involved. Special interest groups and government officials are invited to testify at these hearings. A subpoena may be issued to force a witness to testify. And subcommittees sometimes make junkets to location, and a junket is a trip, that's all it is, to locations that would be affected by the proposed bill, but these trips are often criticized for being made at public expense. So like, that'd be tax money being spent at their trips just to go.
To go and see.
There's actually been a lot kind of in the news about that, people getting a little upset.
In fact, this whole thing with Cuba, there was a whole cadre of members of the House and Senate who went to Cuba years ago, and they kept going back and kept going back on the taxpayers' dime.
Committee actions. The committee may do several things with the bill. It may either report the bill favorably, where the chairman's job is to guide the bill through the debate. It can refuse to report the bill. In other words, it can pigeonhole it, like we had talked about. Report the bill in amended form, a revised form of the bill, sometimes merged with similar bills. Report the bill with an unfavorable recommendation, and these bills are redirected to the House when committees feel they should have a chance to review it. Or report a committee bill, where a new bill is substituted for bills that have been referred to it.
Scheduling a floor debate. Calendars. The bill is placed on one of 5 calendars before it goes for consideration. They are the calendar of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, or the Union calendar, for bills having to do with revenues, appropriations, or government property. The House calendar for public bills, the private calendar for private bills, their corrections calendar, or bills from the Union or House calendar taken out of order, and the discharge calendar for petitions to discharge bills.
Is anyone as confused as I am by the use of 5 different calendars to schedule discussion and debate on bills? How in the world do you keep all that straight?
I guess dividing it makes it easier for them.
Divide and conquer.
Wait, so like,
Pretty simple.
who has the calendars? Like, where do these 5?
The bureaucrats. The bureaucrats are the ones who are hired full-time by the House of Representatives.
I know what bureaucrats are.
They're professional administrators. That's all they do.
Okay, but like, okay, so one calendar would be for like a committee, a certain committee, or like.
Honestly, I've never really gotten into it because it didn't interest me. I wasn't really But if that interests you, go for it. Let us know.
And the rules. The Rules Committee plays a significant role in that it must run a rule before most bills can reach the floor, and without the rule being granted, the bill may be killed or may be a special rule. And a special rule is where members of the House will consider the measure. And then some bills, if they are important enough, may be called up at any time by the House. They typically include appropriations, revenue, committee reports, and special rules, like taxes and all the actually important ones. And then if 2/3 of the House agree to do so, rules may be suspended the first and third Mondays and Tuesdays.
The bill on the floor. The bill's second reading happens on the floor. The minor bills are covered quickly while important measures are considered by the Committee of the Whole and an old parliamentary device for speeding business on the floor. The Committee of a Whole has much more leeway because the House acts as the committee. This helps floor action move much faster. The Speaker of the House steps down when this happens because the House isn't in session. While being read amendments and be offered, the members only have 5 minutes to do so. When work by the committees is finished, the House then reassembles and formally adopts the committee's work.
In this House, they move faster because instead of them acting, with them acting as a committee of the whole, instead of having like the majority of quorum, which is like 200 and something, they would only need 100 to actually be able to do business.
Plus, they don't have to worry about having to vote, and anything that happens in the Committee of the Whole is not binding the way it would be once they dissolve into the committee, into the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Debate. The rule placed in 1841 forbids members from speaking on the floor for more than an hour without consent. Now, if members stray from the topic, the Speaker may force the member to give up the floor. During any time, a member may move the previous question and must be voted on by the House.
And one thing that's of interest here is once they do get that hour, that, and again, that all goes into very specific, the Rules Committee controls. As I told you, the House of Representatives is very different because the Speaker of the House rules it with an iron fist and can really say you only get this much time or this much time, and then we're moving on. That's very different in the Senate, where there's a lot more flexibility and leeway. But it is interesting that a representative can invite others, his peers, either on the Republican side or the Democrat side, and can yield certain amounts of the time which has been allocated to that individual for others to also give their argument or feeling.
Voting. Bills go through much voting when there is offered. When there is offered, members must vote on each amendment. Motions must also be voted on by members. An example would be to move the bill aside for the previous question. There they'd have to vote on that, either yay or nay. And then there are four methods used by the House when voting. There's voice votes when members answer in ayes, yay, aye,
Aye,
or noes. And the Speaker announces the result based on what he hears. But a standing vote is if a member believes the Speaker has made an error in the voice vote, a standing vote will be taken, where those who are standing will be counted for by the clerk. And then the teller vote is when demanded by 1/5 quorum, the Speaker names 2 tellers, one from each side. Members then pass by the tellers telling them whether they're for or against the bill. And then there's a roll call vote, a record vote that must be demanded by 1/5 of the members. And established in 1973, a computerized system that made voting easier, and a board, and on this thing they'd have to put in their card, and it would either say yes, no, or present, and they usually press present when they don't want involvement in that kind of bill. And there's a board.
Elaborate on that, when they don't want involvement in that bill.
When they choose to not be a part of it, like if they don't want to say yes or no, they kind of.
So they abstain?
Well, in a way, but they are voting present. That's for politicians want cover. They want to be able to not have to take the heat, especially if it's a particularly divisive bill. Like abortion. Like I don't want to come down on either side, so I'm going to show up.
Yeah,
I'm here. But I mean, so then it's like, well, come on, dude. Where do you stand? I mean, really, you can't just. That irritates a lot of people. That whole presence thing. Oh, and one other thing, by the way, sometimes when people think it's electronic or computer, they think they can vote from their office. No, that means it
There's actually 48 little stations they could go to vote. And yeah, and then there's above a board the Speaker said that shows what each member voted for, and voting ends when the Speaker locks the electronic system.
Final steps. The bill becomes engrossed, or the bill's final printed form, when it has been approved at the second reading. If approved at its third reading, then the Senate signs the bill and it is delivered to the Senate President's desk.
And that concludes section 3, and we're going to do section 4 right now.